Okay.
We're recording there. We're recording here.
All right. We are good. So,
And then this is just getting us warmed up, and then this is the part we'll edit out.
yeah.
I thought we did. I
So-
thought we did a pretty good job out there.
We
were
did.
Yeah, that
we
was the
did. We were
pre.
just- yeah.
That was the pre. So,
We were pre.
all right. So here we are. Another episode of In the First, and it is Thursday, April the 3rd.
That's correct.
Yep. And we always do a little snippet on the news and the big.
Quick intro. Who are you?
Oh yeah, right. So I'm Jim Weldon.
I'm Chris Baronio, and with us we have.
I'm Andrew Cottone.
Yeah, there we are, and he's our guest for tonight. And it's going to be I think the whole thing's going to really be explosive. Maybe
That's true.
maybe the bomb. So anyway,
Jeez.
I know you're probably tired of those puns, but yeah.
There's a lot of people scared about that.
Oh yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, everybody
nothing-
else might
yeah,
do that. We'll be
yeah.
safe.
Yeah. So no, when
Good
you
to
went
hear.
down to the 38th, you were a massive hit.
Great.
Oh yeah. All people were pumped.
That's it.
Absolutely.
I think it's because we have a responsible business plan.
Exactly. And the people, because I think there was somebody from the Sussex County Council who was there.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, we got locations.
That's exactly what I heard.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get down there and see them the very next week.
Right.
Or later on that week, but that's okay. I'll be up and down the state.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are going to hear from me early and often.
Yeah. Well, this is exciting. So anyway, all right.
Giving a little sneak preview
Yeah,
of what's
it's-
coming in the next few minutes.
Yeah, that's correct. So the big news was yesterday was Liberation Day. President Trump announced his plan for tariffs, and he thought that they were actually very how did he put the term it very fair tariffs. Some countries have extremely high tariffs on many of our products. For instance, in China, Harley Davidson cannot ship a Harley Davidson motorcycle into China. It's the tariffs are way too high. Those tariffs are some of the reasons why a lot of companies ended up moving their businesses to the countries, is because they didn't want to have to pay for the tariffs. So we end up losing, a lot of manufacturing, and I think that the economic theory was we were going to become a service center and not a manufacturing center, and that didn't work out very well. So what President Trump is trying to do is make us into a manufacturing center again. I think Wall Street has done very well over the years, but Main Street has not, and so now it's time to take care of Main Street. So he announced the tariffs. The stock market didn't like that very much.
I think that's an understatement.
Bunch of globalists, and the stock market went down very low. I will contend that there's going to be a little bit of period of pain as we go through this, but eventually, as we start bringing a number of companies back, and as countries start to lower their tariffs and make it more equitable, Trump said, "All I want to do is equity, right? If you want to put a 25 on me, I'll put a 25 on you. You want to have 0, I'll have 0. You want to make it 10, 10. We're just going to make sure it's fair," and that's what he's striving for. So it'll be very interesting to see what's happened. But there has been a number of companies have already said we're moving our operations to the United States, and there's been a couple countries have already said, like Vietnam yesterday said, "Hey, you want to make it 0? We'll make it 0." So that was the big news.
0 seems like a win-win.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So anyway, so we are, sometimes we'll do a bourbon in the first. Well, we're doing a Scotch whiskey in the first. Andrew brought this.
Nice.
So this is Lafroig.
Lefroy. And it's a Scotch, but it was aged in a bourbon barrel.
Yeah.
And it has a really strong, smoky, peaty flavor.
Right. Like most Scotches would. Right.
Right. It is, and it's really unique, and that's what I loved it. But most importantly, it's a reminder of capitalism to me, because that's the drink I shared with the people, with the great people from Universal Display Corporation who bought my first company, Adhesive.
Oh,
So
nice.
when we signed that deal, that's the bottle that we shared. So
That's it. So
Look at that.
all right. Well, my older son Josh loves Scotch. Loves it.
Nice.
I'm more the bourbon guy, but I work in Kentucky, so all right.
hey,
So Scotch in the first. Thank you very
There
much.
you go.
Chendon.
All right. My first sip. Yeah. Definitely got that peaty,
Oh, yeah.
smoky. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
That's really good.
Yeah, it's unique, and it took a little bit to grow on me, but I associate it with a really good event. but there's some seaweed in there.
Uh-huh.
There's definitely the peat and the smokiness is what I like. So if you like that,
Mm-hmm.
another one that's very similar is Talisker.
Okay. All right.
That didn't have the meaning. That didn't have, to me, the Italian guy, me, the emotional guy, it needs
Right.
to have some sort of connection.
Yeah.
And we're here talking about business and tariffs, and the connection was to the sale of our company. And by the way, that's manufacturing in the United States that survived. It didn't just survive and thrived
Mm-hmm.
when everybody else was going to India and China.
Right. Right.
There you go.
Where?
Nice job.
Where's it distilled at?
It must be distilled in
Oh,
Scotland.
yeah, this one's Isle of Islay.
Yep. Okay.
I have trouble
Yeah.
pronouncing those islands up north. I'm from the island down south in Europe, which is Sicily.
Right. Right. Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
That-
Yeah.
Relatively easy to pronounce.
Yeah. So a little more wine than Scotch or bourbon. So, all right. Well, Andrew is going to be here, and he's going to be talking. The reason why we were making all those funny puns, we're going to be talking about hydrogen energy and some very fascinating aspects of it. And you've been traveling around, and that's when I first met you. And we spent some time talking. We thought this would be a very interesting topic. We have had a couple of episodes dealing with energy. Obviously, the high energy costs that have hit the state. We're conservative, so we're a little more for the market and not liking government mandates, and not particularly fond of what the Democrats have done, mandating to bring in renewable energies where the capability under what they're currently doing, which is solar and wind, where it's not capable of producing sufficient energy at a cheap enough cost. You offer an alternative, which is a renewable energy. It's zero carbon.
Zero carbon.
Yeah,
And
right.
That's how we would make it. Or if we were to use nuclear, it would be essentially zero
Mhm.
carbon.
Okay.
But it is a clean source of energy, for
Right.
sure, which is hydrogen.
Yeah.
And where we are in Delaware, we're sitting on top of the greatest source of hydrogen, which is water. And we have water everywhere.
Yes, we do.
And
Yeah, we
it's- And so even when it was raining yesterday or this morning, I'm like, this is cash falling from the sky here. This is amazing. But seriously, if in this energy world, Delaware's got to take a look at this a lot differently.
Right.
We're not sitting on reserves of oil or coal or natural gas. We have none of that.
Right.
And if Delaware waits for the engineering to catch up to the laws of nature, which are on our side,
Mhm.
Delaware's going to miss out. That's why our business plan, which has a third revenue line, puts us in a position for success.
All right. Fantastic.
is
Well,
cool.
before we get into that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Most important, we were talking about this. I'm an Italian American family man, so that's what most. I'm a husband of 28 years with 3 wonderful daughters.
Congratulations.
Cool. That's awesome.
I think so. When I tell you about where I started and where I came, it really started in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when my ancestors came
You
from.
look. Oh, okay. I was going to say because you
Yeah,
look
it's-
amazingly well. Okay.
It's my skincare procedure.
Oh boy.
Nothing like olive oil.
That's right.
Oh no.
But the sacrifice that they made to leave their family, and then you compare it to the sacrifice of an entrepreneur, I don't think it's the same. And in my family in particular, these people made sacrifices for people who weren't, but me, who didn't even know, who wasn't born yet, simply to give me the opportunity. That's a really heavy burden for me to carry. I think about it every day. To that end, each of my daughters are named after one of their grandmothers. So
Ah.
they have that connection to the past. But I'm a Philly guy,
Mhm.
which is not far from Delaware, but never thought about Delaware.
Right.
And there was always something magic in the Italian-American neighborhood for my parents about go become a scientist. So they wanted us to be a scientist. 3 of the 4 of us are scientists. And got my PhD from the University of Florida and came to Delaware. And that's where I started my first chemistry company. I took a company that people were trying to steal the technology, steal the people, steal the contracts, and they did successfully. The owner came to me and he said, hey, we're $1 million in debt, 3 weeks of money in the bank, nearly bankrupt. Do you want to buy the company? So I went home to my wife and I said, there's this company that is $1 million in debt, 3 weeks of money in the bank, and nearly bankrupt. Can I have all our money and buy this company? I'm pretty certain
And she was like, "Hey, yeah."
she did do that, but
Couldn't you have waited 3 weeks?
just this, I could have got it for free, right? I didn't think that through. Much better businessman. I actually thought I was going to say no, and I was going to be like, I went home. My wife said, we have 2 newborns, can't do it.
You're not the bad guy.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, it was, I'd be in, but, hold me back, guys. I don't want to fight. She said, go for it. I looked behind me to see who the hell she saw. I can still see her at the top of the stairs holding my middle daughter, who was a newborn, and looking at me with such confidence. And I said, screw it. Let's roll.
Yeah.
And
cool.
and we did it. And a lot of those. So since that time, we built up a company. It's a real Delaware story.
Mhm.
Because I don't know that we would have been successful anywhere else because of the talent that's in the chemistry talent is in our DNA.
Can you give people a little sense of what Adhesive is?
Adhesive is a chemical manufacturing company. And so where do you touch our products today?
Mhm.
The colors in your cell phone. Many of those components were manufactured right here in Delaware at the Adhesive site. If you wear contact lenses from J&J, which is the last thing I did as CEO of Adhesive, was sign a $100 million contract with Johnson & Johnson to show that we are manufacturing that critical material here. These are our techniques and innovations that have been able to bring these highly complex molecules to the market.
Excellent.
That's
So
very cool.
I feel like I've been training for this hydrogen event for my entire life, from how to run a business to learning about heavy water, to learning how to do manufacturing while competing and winning against India and China. This is my battle to win, and I'm excited for it.
Oh, good.
Very cool.
So,
Awesome. And I was going to say that there's another angle on this. Like Jim, you touched on the fact that we've talked about energy, and
We
Andrew,
have.
you're going to talk about hydrogen as a form of very clean, carbon-free energy. But there's also a piece of it which is running a business in Delaware, right? We've talked about how we need to bring back our economy here in Delaware. We need to create jobs, and you have a track record of doing that,
right.
and a plan
That's-
to keep doing that.
And, I mean,
so I
let's
think touching on that would be great for people.
Yeah, I think let's look at that moment in time when the company Universal Display Corporation purchased Adhesive. That corporation, they're traded on the NASDAQ under the ticker OLED, and they're based in New Jersey. Now, when they bought us, we were at about 39 people. They could have they knew they were going to expand. They could have put those labs up in New Jersey. They could have put them halfway in between in Philadelphia. But because Delaware rallied around Adhesive, we were able to grow here. Now there's about 170 six-figure, high-paying PhD technician manufacturing jobs that are here because Delaware was able to move quick. We had the infrastructure, we had the will, and we had the talent to be able to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
So we went from
Very cool.
25,000 square feet of space to 100,000 square feet of space. That's the power of Delaware.
Yeah.
That's
That-
needed.
and that's good. And that's it seems to be a unique story now because we have spoken to so many business people who are really struggling to get through the maze of bureaucracy that exists. Now, this is a small state. You would think it would be much easier.
I was just listening to Ben DuPont's talk at the CEO series
Mhm.
at the Hagley Museum yesterday, and he was comparing. So on that business topic, he was comparing the number of $10 billion companies that have been in existence for less than 50 years in the United States dwarfs those number of the equal companies in Europe. But when you look at Delaware, there's only one. It's Insight.
Hmm.
So that gets on. You can be slow and fast, or big and slow. I'm sorry. You can be small. Sorry. You can be small and fast,
Right.
or big and slow, but you can't be small and slow.
Right.
And that's the challenge we face today. Is that
It
we're
is.
small and slow.
It is one of the issues. I actually did a couple of years ago. We did Delaware Views TV, and I did a bunch of little clips. And one of the clips that I talked about is that Delaware is one of the most regulated states in the country. There are 11 words of regulation for every employee in the state of Delaware, and it would take 347 hours for one person to sit down and read the entire Delaware regulatory code. Now, the problem is for the smaller companies who don't have the resources to have to go through this maze, they struggle with that. The larger companies, more resources, they hire teams of people to come in. And so, and obviously we've had a situation where a lot of companies are fleeing the incorporation here in the state. So, and I've talked to a couple of business people who just said whether it was Newcastle County or whether it was the state, it just wasn't a really great environment. So if you're having a success, that is nice to see.
Well, it can be done, but it's going to take that grit, and that's
Correct.
another thing that came out of that discussion yesterday. I think Thayer or Ben Dupont were saying that see a lot of intelligent people fail,
Mhm.
but what to really be successful, it needs to be a combination of grit and intelligence.
Right.
And I think to your point about the state of Delaware and the 11 words for every employee, I'm pretty certain you can please fact check me if it's not the top, it's one of the top. But I think the state of Delaware is the largest employer in the state of Delaware.
Yeah, that's correct.
It is.
Fortunately.
Yeah,
Which is a
so,
problem.
So no, so that just amplifies
It does.
the amount of regulation that we have here.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, all of those people are working for some reason at the state level in order to drive, monitor, create, whatever, all of those regulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the constant thing that I always talk about is that governments don't produce anything; they absorb, right? So when half of the employees in the state are tied to the state government, there's not a product, there's not a transaction of money that occurs. They are working as a service, but that's not a product, and that service we all have to pay for. Different than if I go to Home Depot. If I go to Home Depot and I buy a product, the government isn't paying for that product. You're not helping to pay for that product. You're not helping. I'm paying for that product. But anything that the government produces, we're all paying for that product. And so that increases the burden on each taxpayer because of that cost.
It does, and
Right.
you know what I'm looking at a government that I would love makes it provides structure,
Mm-hmm.
rules,
Yep.
not too much regulation, so that we have freedom to operate, but they apply structure so that you know how to navigate the system. And the parallel I draw is um, if if you wanted to move before the Eisenhower interstate system, if you want to move something like in the Wild West, it take forever. Horses and donkeys and walking, that's going to take forever. But when you have gridlock and lots of traffic lights and you're going traffic light by traffic light, that's going to slow you down.
Right.
But that perfect balance is when you know what everybody's going to do. Generally on the road, you have the interstate system with the lines and the
Right.
marked exits. We can all move our goods from point A to point B. We can move ourselves from point A to point B very effectively, very efficiently.
In an orderly process.
Operational discipline.
Correct.
But
Yes.
that's what I would look for. Like, let's run the government like a business and provide the structure like we did at Adhesives, like we'll do at Eternium. Provide the structure so that the employees can go and event, and the employees can go and sell, and the employees can build, and they're compensated for
Right.
it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I love the analogy about the interstate too.
Yeah, I kind of stumbled over it, but it's been a late day. I've been grilled by a lot of different EPCs, which are engineering, procurement, and construction companies.
Mhm.
We're getting ready to sign a big contract.
Good. Good.
for you.
So how'd you get into hydrogen?
I was sitting on the roof. I like to reminisce. I was sitting on a roof overlooking Lake Zurich and doing what all these heavy water chemists, there's probably 12 of us in the Western Hemisphere. No,
Really?
no lie. There's not a lot. And we were bemoaning the fact of the absence of heavy water in the Western Hemisphere. Because and really what we're after is deuterium, and we can get into that later. But I was talking to my Dutch buddy and my Swiss buddy, who we've done a lot of deals with, probably hundreds of millions of dollars worth of heavy water. And what are we going to do with this? What are we going to do with it? We're drinking scotch, we're drinking beer, and somebody said to me, Andrew, there's this plant in Rotterdam, Netherlands, that is doing electrolysis. I immediately knew what he meant. It meant the kinetic isotope. And anyway, it meant there's a way to be able to isolate heavy water from a manufacturing plant that's already up and running. So I said, oh my God, Rotterdam, Netherlands, lowest lying country in Europe, all the water that they need, windmills everywhere. You think of the Dutch and windmills and tulips, right? I was thinking about the parallels to Delaware. Lowest lying state in the nation, all the water that we need. Pretty good. A pretty good location with respect to wind, solar, but with land-based wind, I'll make that
Right,
distinction.
sure,
I
yeah.
saw the parallels. I say nobody else is thinking about bringing a third revenue line into this. My God, man, we can do this. Delaware centrally located. All this centrally located to people who need 2,000 metric tons of hydrogen a day, and we're on top of a pipeline. So it all started bemoaning heavy water overlooking Lake Zurich
Nice.
with my heavy water buddies.
Now you're going to have to explain heavy water.
Yeah, I was about to ask that.
because look, spent years as a volunteer firefighter. Water is 1 gallon of water is 8.3 pounds per
But-
gallon.
Doesn't all water weigh the same?
Yeah. How do we get heavy water?
About 10 minutes after the Big Bang, so we're going back 14 billion years.
Okay.
One out of every 5,000, on average, it can vary, but one out of, in this universe anyway, or in the solar system, 1 out of every 5,000 hydrogen atoms has an extra neutron. So it weighs twice as much as a regular hydrogen. Thus
Okay.
not the name heavy water.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people think about heavy water with respect to nuclear weapons, and we're not using that.
Right.
Although there is an Inspector General's report from 2016 saying the United States does not have enough heavy water to support its needs through 2031, and nothing's changed since then. But what it means in chemistry is an added advantage. That deuterium, that extra neutron, allows you to have a 10% stronger bond. So let's assess. Insight in our state has a deuterated drug. Why is that good? We take a normal drug, goes right to our liver. The liver recognizes it is not belonging, immediately breaks it down. That creates a lot of metabolites, byproducts, and we feel side effects. And so you have to give extra drug to be able to survive the liver, to get to the disease, to solve the disease so you feel better, but you have to deal with the side effects. Now, let's say you can replace one of those hydrogens with a deuterium.
Mm-hmm.
That's a 10% stronger bond. Now the drug goes to the liver. The liver can't break it apart as easily. It can get to the disease, can fix the issue. And since you can dose lower, you have the same efficacy, but no side effects. In
And
theory.
using less drugs that you have to
And
manufacture. it
using
sounds
less
like.
Right.
drugs.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the uniqueness with deuterium. And a lot of people, oh my God, it's radioactive. No, it's stable.
Right.
It's in us right now. It's in this drink. It's just the trick is, how do you separate that one from the 5,000 economically? And we know how to do that.
So always there's no stupid questions, but it may
Sounds
be
like you're teeing up for one.
oh yeah.
They're
Maybe it's a silly question, but so I work out, and the big rage is hydrogen infused water.
I've seen it.
Okay.
Don't understand it.
Okay. I'm curious about because when you're talking about the heavy water, and is it any relation, or what is it?
No relation. No
Okay.
relation. So we started a hydrogen company, and I'll get to the hydrogen in the water.
Mm-hmm.
But we started a hydrogen company. Let's make this clear. This is a hydrogen play.
Right.
And the reason this is a hydrogen play is that we know when you burn hydrogen, you get 287 units of energy.
Mm-hmm.
In theory, the laws of nature tell us that you should use about 230 units of energy to be able to electrolyze the water, split it in half, the hydrogen and oxygen. So that means it's a plus 57. That's a plus 57. That's a benefit. We're not there yet. But what heavy water does is it makes us profitable now. So the hydrogen in the water, hydrogen is a highly reactive compound. That's why it's good with energy. That's why it produces a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
The theory goes that it can react with any of the oxidants in your body, so
Right.
it acts as an antioxidant.
Correct.
That's the theory.
That's the theory.
The reason I haven't read about this. I've been up to here trying to figure out engineering.
Right.
Now.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
like trying to run a
Yeah.
company or something.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, there's a couple people on the far left who are like, hydrogen's a greenhouse gas. I'm like, oh my God, you
Come
people, we
on.
can never do anything right. What in
Yeah.
the world? That took me like 3 or 4 months to figure out how the hell hydrogen could be a greenhouse gas. I said,
Right.
you know what? Okay, I understand it now, but I haven't delved into the hydrogen. water.
Okay. All right. So, but
All right.
thanks for my curiosity. So, but it is part of the infusion of oxygen. The benefits of oxygen are
Yeah.
extremely high.
One of the mayors that I was talking to, it is, and it's not just hydrogen that goes into that water; it's also the oxygen that's there,
Correct.
because it's a mini electrolysis plant right there. One of the mayors I was talking to land about up and down the state, saying, "Look, I got hydrogen water," and he charged it up, and I watched the bubbles. I'm like,
Mhm.
that's All that is electrolysis, man. That's exactly what I want to do, and it's around everywhere. And there's a lot of people are like, oh my God, is this going to be safe? Well, look, you're drinking it.
You're right. Well, so it may be a good segue, right? Other than putting it into sports drinks, like what do people use hydrogen for today?
Hydrogen's used largely in the refining industry, in the oil industry. So when you mine, when you drill and bring this oil out of the ground, this old dinosaur muck is like this goo, and it doesn't look like the gasoline that I just pumped across the street at Wawa before I came in here. It doesn't look at that. It's not that. It's not that free flowing light oil. You got to break this down, and the hydrogen helps break it down into the pieces that we know and touch as gasoline or some of the polymers, and it's making up some of the plastics that are here. So hydrogen is used there, and in fact, the world uses 97 million metric tons of hydrogen every year. We know how to use it. We know how to move it. We're just making it differently. So we'll start off selling our hydrogen into people who are already using it. I don't need to develop a market. I don't need to wait for Toyota or high tech to put filling stations here. We'll get there, but we'll sell to people who are already using it.
Yeah, so it sounds to that point, right? It sounds like there's already companies in Delaware that have a need for it today.
That's right.
It's all around us, generally, in a manufacturing sense, right? What Delaware City? You got a refinery, you got chemical companies that are up, like Croda up in Newcastle. I'm assuming. I'm just throwing out some names, but I mean, are all of these companies that are actively using hydrogen today, whether or not you make it and supply it?
I think yes, they are using hydrogen. And then let's go further up 95, which, by the way, guys, we're sitting on a pipeline. And this is what typical scientists don't think about, is all those operational logistics on how to profitably move your product from point A to point B. But when you go up 95, which we're sitting on that pipeline, look at all those refineries in Chester. And over the bridge in New Jersey, and then and then down to Schuylkill, and then a little bit further out into some of the adjacent counties to Philadelphia. There's a ton of industry around here, and this is exactly what I think these tariffs are going to do: is keep that industry here, help help them compete fairly, and we can near supply a very relatively inexpensive source of hydrogen for them.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. That's what the tariffs will do. Is it will drive business here. It'll keep business here, and it'll become very profitable.
Yeah, I wrote down in here, like we were talking about the weaponization of tariffs beforehand. There's also weaponization of raw materials, and we think about the lithium or the battery.
Sure.
I mean, frankly, China has a strategy for the communist government to subsidize a lot of the mining operations.
Right.
And so we felt this at Adhesive, where we needed lithium, but it was all being subsidized by China so that they would drive the prices down to pennies on the dollar, put the properly run mines out of business, and then China now controlled that market. Guess what's happening to the heavy water side of things too? India is doing this. India has a heavy water board, and India, the people who isolate heavy water now are India, Russia, China, and Iran.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Guess what they're going to do with that? Right. They're not.
Which countries have nuclear power programs?
Right.
Or nuclear weapons programs, I should say.
And now what India is doing, exactly, you just described the Harley Davidsons in India. Oh, all these deuterated drugs and pharmaceuticals? We have heavy water here in India. We have a heavy water board in India. You better bring your pharmaceutical manufacturing over to India. Check it out. Merck, German Merck, the former Aldrich has signed a deal with the Indian Heavy Water Board to do just that.
Really?
And more people are coming because we're running out of heavy water in the Western Hemisphere until we launch, of course.
Right.
Wow.
So, so people are listening to this and say, okay, so we need hydrogen. It helps out in some type of manufacturing in some way. I don't know how, but it sounds really neat. Am I gonna be able to heat my home with hydrogen? Am I gonna be able to drive a car with hydrogen? What's the benefit to me, the person who is struggling with very, very expensive utility bills right now, if anything?
Yeah, I think the hydrogen's not, in my opinion, hydrogen's not ready to be energy yet.
Right.
the laws of nature, I was trying to make that clear. The laws of nature are on our side.
Mm-hmm.
And what American engineer has not been able to solve a problem for the laws of nature? We'll
Right.
get there. If the laws of nature weren't on our side, I wouldn't be doing this. But what I look at hydrogen is two ways. It's a packaged energy, which will be ready for in about 10 or 15 years.
Okay.
And that's where it can really start to help us. But it's also a chemical. It's a chemical reagent used in refining. So it might not help your energy bills today, but it'll help them tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll tell you why I think that's important in a little bit. But it can help the cost on everything else, because where else are you going to get hydrogen? You're going to move it from Canada? Are you going to move it from Europe? Where are you getting this hydrogen from? How is it being made? Well, Delaware can be the hydrogen capital of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And when the engineering catches up, which I think it will in 10 or 15 years, to the laws of nature, we will then be the energy capital of at least the East Coast.
The reason why I mentioned it is an energy source, because I know that's not your main topic right now.
It will be.
It will be. Is that Exxon is spending a considerable amount of money in the Houston area developing hydrogen production.
Yes.
If Exxon's doing it, I'm assuming they're thinking that somewhere down the road it's going to become a viable energy source.
It is, because it carries 3 times the power of carbon-based fuels.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Per kilogram or
per
something.
kilogram.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Right.
and I think so. Exxon's doing it. Let's even look larger at the world. The country that leads the world in green or clean hydrogen today is China. The country that will lead the world in clean hydrogen in 2030, 2032 is Saudi Arabia. So take a step back. Not just Exxon, but the coal capital of the world in China and the oil capital of the world in Saudi Arabia are after
Right.
this. Why? Because of that fundamental law of nature. Hydrogen burns with 3 times the energy that carbon does.
Yeah.
That's what they see.
So
Now,
Interesting.
no, I've done some work in Saudi Arabia, and they have a very bold plan, which makes a lot of sense because they are obviously one of the richest nations in the world. Their people go to the finest schools in Europe and the United States, so highly educated. They also realize that at some point the oil will run out, which it will in Saudi Arabia. I mean, there's other sources, but there's only so much there. They recognize that, and they want to explore other avenues, especially technology, because they have this brilliant, trained people who are fleeing Saudi Arabia, and they're bleeding money because there's nothing to do in Saudi Arabia. So the prince has been doing. We all know that. Well, I know that.
Okay.
You know that. Yeah.
I just assumed I've never been there.
I've been there. So of all the countries in the Arabian Peninsula, it was my least popular country to be at, my favorite to be at. But so yeah, if they're embarking on it, there's a reason why.
Yeah, and it's that fundamental law. The fundamental law of nature burns with 3 times the energy. But I think if you go back and look at what Exxon's doing now in Texas,
Right.
hey, that's really where we know how to use hydrogen. We know how to move it. We know how to use it. We this is all, it's all been discovered. We're just making it differently.
Mhm.
There's 1,600 miles of pipeline in the Gulf Coast. Delaware, I understand why all the refineries are there. Delaware can be that leader, at least on the East Coast, because I think this gets back to the energy.
Right.
The American citizen wants low cost, and generally we want clean too, because we have to breathe the air. We want low cost, clean energy. And I think, how do you do that? You do that by kind of like a farm to table, in my opinion, a farm to table energy model.
Mhm.
You near source what your energy is going to be. So the energy portfolio of Delaware should be a lot different than Manitoba, Canada, or Phoenix, Arizona.
Mhm.
Right? If Phoenix should have a lot of solar because they have a lot of land, they have a lot
Right.
of sun.
Yeah.
But they shouldn't have electrolysis out there because they don't have the water.
Right.
But we do, and we have a port. They don't. We could be moving our hydrogen all over the world in 20 or 30 years.
So you've mentioned several times we have pipeline. What's the relevance of pipeline?
Pipeline is it will lower the distribution cost.
Okay.
Pretty significant. Now we have an advantage. Our business model will be profitable. I don't run any other type of business.
Right.
But it will be profitable moving hydrogen by trucks. But what people are going to want are lower cost, and
Mhm.
there is a lower cost way, and a pipeline is a fraction of the cost of trucking, and so and it can also act as storage as well, and so we just put our hydrogen in a pipeline,
Right.
and then it's used up and down the I-95 corridor.
So those pipelines, though, are used today, or are there ones that are sitting idle? Or
They are. There's a lot of fossils of the old refinery and refining industry that's here,
Mhm.
like Old South Philly, and I remember that plant when I was a kid. But let's be clear, also that oil or natural gas pipelines can't handle hydrogen.
Mhm.
okay, I was going to ask about that. Thank
Yeah,
you.
but
Yeah,
we
yeah.
kind of know that. Like the
Okay.
Romans had
Lead.
they had plumbing, right?
Right.
They use lead. Oh my God, we all love water in our house, but let's not use lead.
Right.
Oh my God, we all love hydrogen. Let's not use stainless steel. I want. Sorry, I wonder if the techno. I'm Italian. I talk with my hands.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder if the technology exists to be able to move hydrogen by pipelines. Oh, let's look at Houston. I mean, let's look at the Gulf Coast, 1,600 miles of pipeline. But what the pipelines mean here is one, there's the experience in running pipelines. Two, they already had the right of way to lay the pipeline, so you don't have to fight we wouldn't do this, but another company would. We don't have to fight those battles to be able to lay a pipeline down. Does Delaware understand what we're sitting on here? Like, this is that next Pete DuPont moment.
Mhm.
This is like we were in 1981. This can really revolutionize this.
Right. So you're gonna create a company and you're gonna produce hydrogen, which will be a gas.
Yes.
Okay. And that hydrogen currently is used for various sources. You talked about in manufacturing. You talked about the oil industry. So you're creating something that they need.
Right.
You will need to push that gas somewhere, either by truck or by pipeline, and then the companies will have an abundance of hydrogen. But more importantly, you're going to have the ability of producing heavy water.
That's correct.
And who uses that heavy water?
I think you take a look at the semiconductor industry and the chips industry. President Biden signed the CHIPS Act. It's going to bring all microchip or much of the microchip manufacturing to the United States.
Right.
Guess what the last treatment is in many of the microchips? It's deuterium treatment. Where are you going to get that from?
Okay, gotcha. Right.
So it's
Wow.
used in the semiconductor. It's the colors in your cell phone are deuterated. I
Right.
know. I deuterated them.
Yeah.
The pharmacy.
You're a deuterator.
That's right.
All right.
I was going to.
Sounds
We're
like
going
a good shirt or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a deuterator.
Yeah.
So, but it adds that stability. When you think about the fiber optics that are all around here, everybody's talking about data centers.
Mhm.
How are you moving that information? They're all in fiber optics.
Right.
The fiber optic, the inside of the fiber optics, the last treatment is with deuterium. Why? Again, that added stability, the deuterium isotope effect that we built a company on, and now we're going to utilize that to be able to make a hydrogen profitable, give Delaware a head start.
So I got to ask a dumb question then. This
Well,
is
there aren't
my
any dumb
opportunity.
questions.
It's my opportunity.
Maybe a silly question.
So the technology that you're bringing to market is your ability to isolate the 1 out of 5,000, or can you actually create
Isolate.
deuterium? It's
Isolate.
Okay.
Isolate, because if we're creating, then we're at, I don't know if it's an alpha or beta or a gamma particle. I forgot that long ago.
Yeah. Okay.
But that would be a nuclear reaction, and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not doing that.
Gamma. We're a
So
little.
so they're not doing that.
Yeah, we are not doing that. We're relying on what God did 10 minutes after the Big Bang, 14
Great.
billion years
Gotcha.
ago.
All right.
And are you making anything today, or are you setting the groundwork to scale up?
No, we are not making anything today. We are
Okay.
definitely pre-revenue, and for the first time since I think 2005, last year I ran a company for a loss. Now I know it's an investment,
Right.
Sure.
but we're doing all of our engineering, and as you might imagine, I'm a numbers guy, very very analytical and scientific. So, and I take the confidence of which our investors have placed in us to treat their money with the utmost respect. So I was going to be absolutely certain to the highest level I could that our financials worked out.
Right.
And so we did a feasibility study, and then we're moving on to a pre-feed, and each time we refine our numbers more and more, so once that engineering's done, it's a lot of planning. Then it's go time.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
So, so you're going to produce this, and then you'd be positioned so that as the technology and the capability improves, at some point you feel 10 to 15 years, energy might actually be a source. Or, I mean, the hydrogen may actually be a source of energy.
You're right, and I also think I do, and I also think that we can bring it here sooner because I spent 20 years competing against the lower costs and then less environmental regulation in India and China. We didn't just survive; we thrived. I take a look at I take a look at a pilot program in Vancouver, Canada, between Toyota and High Tech. High Tech is a company that makes hydrogen filling stations, and Toyota today. They don't. We don't have to wait for them to be invented. Today, they already have them. So does I think BMW. Hydrogen cars.
Right.
So there's 5 filling stations provided by High Tech, and Toyota cars are going around Vancouver, filling up on those stations. I mean, at those stations on hydrogen.
Right.
Well, that hydrogen costs like $15 or $16 a kilo. Come on.
Wow.
That's not reasonable.
Yeah.
Like so. What I'd love to do once we get our plants up and running, we'll have a couple filling stations. We'll put them in ourselves. I don't care, and we'll sell that hydrogen for $4 or $5, and for $4 or $5 a kilo. And like, what does that mean? Well, for about $20 to $30, then you can go 400 miles in a Toyota Mirai.
Wow.
That's what that means.
That's what it means. Okay.
And-
It doesn't.
Good.
Oh, sorry.
And it doesn't mean it's like today I went home. I love my car. Nice big Cadillac Escalade. I love my car. Before I would buy the house that we would go and then make sure it would fit in the garage. It fits in by like 2 inches. Every time I go home, my wife's Tesla's charging in there. I have to park outside. I have pollen all over my car. Upsets me. So the filling of a hydrogen car will be very, very similar process to what we experience with gasoline.
Nice.
And so that hydrogen-powered car technology, is that through fuel cells, or is that actually burning the hydrogen in a, I'll say, internal combustion engine?
Yeah, a fuel cell. A
Fuel
fuel
cell,
cell,
okay.
which is kind of like an inverse electrolyzer.
Right.
So,
Okay.
electrolyzer uses electricity to split the water into hydrogen and oxygen, and the fuel cell uses hydrogen, bonds it with oxygen, and creates electricity that way.
Excellent.
Is there a byproduct of the hydrogen production?
It is water.
Water. Yeah.
That's
And
it.
what do you do with that water?
Oh, when you burn it? It
No,
just-
I mean, is it?
How do you
is it-
dispose of
Oh
water?
wait. Oh, I'm sorry. I was. I know. I drink mine.
Yeah.
There's a little bit.
No,
of
I
flavor
mean
in
it's
it.
it's not contaminated. It's just it's water.
So when you is there a byproduct from what we make in the hydrogen plant? No. I mean we're only we're purifying the water a little bit more, so there might be
Right.
some salts. But you know what? The water here is pretty clean. But when you're burning the hydrogen to be able to get your power,
Through a fuel cell.
yeah, the only byproduct is water.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you
That's
know
it.
what? When you burn your gasoline, the byproduct is water and carbon dioxide.
And carbon dioxide, right?
It's just water. So
Right.
I mean, you get that initially when before your car warms up. If you're behind somebody, you can see the tailpipe spitting out
Sure.
liquid water.
Yeah.
Eventually, the car warms up and it just becomes exhaust. I mean, gas, literally gas, steam.
Yeah.
So you don't see it.
So the company that you're going to have, how many employees would you have, and are we looking at what type of skill set?
Yeah. Each site will have between 30 and 50 employees.
Okay.
There will be some high-tech engineers that we need to bring in here, but in very large part, we want to hire in the communities that we build.
Mhm.
And like we've done with Adhesius, we will set up training programs at Del Tech, Del State, University of Delaware, Wilmington University,
Right.
to be able to develop our workforce.
Okay.
A 9-month certificate is really what the majority of the people will need, and they'll be 6-figure jobs.
Nice. Okay.
And we just announced a partnership with Honeywell around their AI, but also in the workforce training. And we announced an agreement that we have selected the Siemens Energy electrolyzers.
Oh, okay.
So there's a great opportunity for us to collaborate down the road with Siemens Energy to bring some of their electrolyzers. And by the way, they have a hydrogen turbine that will be able to produce electricity in case there's a power plant that's no longer functioning when the people in Delaware need power, like the Indian.
Where they need
Wow.
they need power.
So that would
Yeah, we
be
do.
we would look to do that. But you really look at flying wheeling something like this. I'm really proud of the Adhesius story. But where you really feel ramifications of the Adhesius jobs are in South Korea, where the OLED fab is, or somewhere else. But what can, but when, so I think Delaware should be, and I'm proud of the Adhesius story. But when you think about what hydrogen can really do to the local economy, it's really going to dwarf what we've done with Adhesius, because we can move into hydrogen power cars, hydrogen energy, hydrogen in our homes, hydrogen.
Right.
We can start. We have a deep water port in Wilmington. My God, man, let's be the Europeans are going to build hydrogen powered ships. Where are they going to dock in North America? Why shouldn't it be here?
Sure.
Right.
Right. So what else is that going to bring? There's so much more potential for that.
And how many sites would you envision building?
5.
Okay.
I already have them picked out.
Oh, okay.
wow.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
And why is that? Like,
Chris,
why
if
wouldn't
you-
it be? Why wouldn't
you
it
were
make
gonna
sense?
Sell them some. You're done.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Seriously,
Now,
calling all realtors. No,
yeah. Why?
but like, yeah, why wouldn't you just make one big site? Why would you do 5?
Well, then we just talked about the energy cost. Boy, would I upset people if I put one big site in the middle of somewhere,
Right.
and I put one big site in the middle of somewhere, and it just drained all that electricity. So I have to be cognizant. There's a lot of strengths about Delaware. I have to be cognizant about some of the weaknesses. And with the weaknesses, how are we going to get the power here? That's another reason why we have a collaboration with Siemens Energy, because they also have electrical transmission. But by having one big hub of hydrogen, that makes it more difficult for us to be able to move our hydrogen it makes us have a smaller radius to be able to move our hydrogen by trucks.
Gotcha.
So we will be a benefit to the community. We'll bring in extra electricity, and that will hopefully lower the cost for initially for the rest, and not by any direct means of our own, but because there's more there. 2, will be near located to our clients. So better. So, for instance, if I build in Sussex, I can get to Baltimore and Virginia much easier than if I build in somewhere in Newcastle County.
Right.
Right. Okay.
There's a,
Are these brownfield sites, or are they virgin sites, or?
I would prefer brownfield sites.
Okay.
Because another disadvantage of Delaware is that we don't have a lot of land. So we shouldn't, in my opinion, fill our land with solar, because we're largely there's more chickens here than people, and and with crops or agriculture. So you can't farm. To this city boy's knowledge, you can't farm as effectively on grass that has solar panels over it. So
I think that's very true.
It makes it challenging. Yeah,
It
yeah.
does.
that's
Yeah.
it. So that's. But what I've also found is that there's a lot of brownfields around here. So
There
let's
are.
utilize our land where you shouldn't put houses on it. You can't put people there. You can't put crops or chickens on them. Like, let's make this. Take the brownest of the brown and make them the greenest of the green. And green for money and green for the environment.
Sure.
And by the way, the last thing about those brownfields is that there's probably a lot of infrastructure. They were manufacturing brownfields.
At some point.
Right. So there was manufacturing. There's the fossils of what I need from being able to move the water there, or the electricity there, or the roads.
Right.
I
Right.
can resurrect those fossils. It's also smart business, in my opinion.
It is. So and obviously they're already in a zone for industrial, and you don't have to worry about those issues. So, and I'm assuming it'd be an industrial zone.
I do. Yeah, it is. It's not HI or heavy industry.
Right.
It's just it's actually pretty simple to plant that we want. But I'll tell you what. Let's be honest. My 3 biggest concerns on this, functionally, of course, we're worried about the community, but functionally, about is this business going to work? It's electricity, permitting, and regulation. So even if it's zoned, I'm still worried about how fast
Yeah.
is this state going to move. We talked about that.
Right.
And then the third concern is offtake agreements and customers. But Dora Cheatham is a phenomenal partner, vice president at Eternium. She's really been out in the field making sure our hydrogen is sold,
Yeah.
and oxygen is sold too.
Very cool.
The 5 sites, are they throughout the state, or are they centered in one county, or?
They're throughout the state. We're targeting 2 in Newcastle,
Okay.
1 in Kent, and 2 in Sussex.
Okay. Wow.
But we haven't finalized any land yet. But it starts with that first plant.
Sure.
And we're really honing in on our first plant.
Okay. When do you think it's hard because of the permitting? When do you think you might actually be able to start the construction?
I plan to start March, April 2026.
26.
1
Okay.
year out.
Yeah, I had
1
it.
year out, yeah.
That's when we'll start. Look, I'm faced with delays, and everybody tells me Everybody tells me, oh, the transformers are 36 months out. And like,
Mhm.
all right, I don't do this. Okay, well, I'm just going to fold my hands and wait. No, like, I really are going to, I'm telling Siemens Energy now, you guys have transformers. You guys wanted to launch your PEM electrolyzers here in the United States.
Right.
You don't have a site anywhere else. I'll pay a premium because that's capitalism,
Mhm.
but take that transformer that's going to China, Saudi Arabia, or wherever it's going. I don't care if it's going to Pennsylvania. Move
Bring
it
it
over,
here.
bring it here,
Right.
please,
Let's
and
get-
I'll pay for it.
Let's get this.
So
started.
there's a way that we can get this done, and I want us to be online producing hydrogen in mid to late 2027.
And
Yeah. So once you're in a perfect world, you're breaking ground in a year-ish, and you think 18 months to get it built and commercialized.
That's correct.
okay.
That's correct. And look, I have aggressive timelines, but we've been meeting them pretty well thus far.
Cool.
And so energy was a concern. Can Delaware provide sufficient energy for your needs?
Delaware can provide sufficient energy for needs. That's why we have the design one, build many. There's also some OpEx advantages in there. There's an inflection point for the high cost drivers like the electrolyzers in our plant. So for me to be able to maximize that rather than go up to 8 or 10 electrolyzers, what's that sweet spot with respect to Siemens
Right.
that we can do? Delaware can do this. We wouldn't put a strain on the state if it couldn't do it. We'd have to go to Maryland
Mhm.
or New Jersey or Pennsylvania. That definitely could do this.
Yeah.
I know on the Energy Stakeholders Committee, we're talking about SMRs, small modular reactors. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's something that
That's
we
where
really,
we should be going, I
that's what-
think.
right. But let's like Chris and I were talking a little bit beforehand about the mindset that we have, and even with nuclear reactors. And I want to be really careful here. There's a lot of operational discipline and effectiveness in running nuclear reactors. So I'm only talking about the electricity when it comes out of the plant. There's a mindset to running electrons, making electrons, and there's a mindset to making chemicals.
Mhm.
The electrons, there's when you move an electron from point A to point B, you lose 2 to 5% of those electrons every mile. Can you imagine if I'm running a chemical company and I'm losing 2 to 5% of my chemicals all along the way?
Right.
And rightly so, the EPA, the citizens, everybody will be up in arms. But if we lose these electrons, well, we don't see them, but we just accept that loss. It's a sloppy industry,
Mhm.
moving from point A to point B. So the calculation I like to think about, and I haven't found the answer to this because the electrical engineering is hard, and I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there, but let's run this calculation. Indian River produces electrons, or there's an SMR down there.
It used to.
Right, used
Yeah.
to, right?
Not anymore.
When it did, how many megawatts would you need to make at Indian River when it was working to get 1 megawatt up DuPont experimental station, considering line loss 2 to 5% every mile, versus a situation where maybe you made those electrons, transformed it into hydrogen, and then you move that hydrogen along a pipeline for 90 miles. And when you move gaseous hydrogen, of course, with no leaks, you lose 0%. So your line loss goes from 2 to 5% over 100 miles to 2 to 5% over, let's say, 10 miles. What's that? How does that work? Let's use our electrons effectively. That's what we're proposing.
Right.
So I think we're in better shape to be able to accelerate the hydrogen energy prospect better than anybody else. Heavy water is that chicken and egg solves that chicken and egg problem
Sure.
for us.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Wow.
I think
I have a hard stop in about 2 minutes. So
Yes.
I might duck out because you got a fantastic
Yeah.
conversation going here.
I think you were talking a lot about energy, and we will get it there. And we look a lot different than all these government subsidized companies. You can find them on the NASDAQ as well. I don't
Right.
want to be that bad guy who names them just yet, but privately I might. But but let's look at what Delaware is putting into effect. We have House Bill 99 that says we're going to reduce our energy our emissions by 50% by 2030, 100% by 2050.
Yeah.
Cool. We import 80 times more energy than we make ourselves.
We do.
This is a solution for that.
It is.
And if you look at if the Delaware resident, and we all are, is up in arms about our electric bills at 11 or 12 cents a kilowatt hour,
Mhm.
California's paying 25 cents a kilowatt hour.
Right.
That's what's coming our way. My hypothesis is that California's at 25 cents a kilowatt hour because the government regulated that they had to use technologies that weren't ready to go. And when technologies are not ready to go, they cost more money.
They do.
And then
What
the
we're
resi-
experiencing here. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, Andrew, thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Fascinating topic.
This
Really
is awesome.
appreciate it.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks
Yeah.
for spending time with us.
Yeah. So, any closing comments? Do you have a website or anything?
We do. Our website is www.aternium.com, ATERIUM. Follow us on LinkedIn because community outreach is huge. You'll find me up and down the state, all over the country.
You
really
are.
talking about this because it's really important.
Yeah.
It's something that there's a lot. I found there's a lot of fear out there, uncertainty about chemistry, and asking me the hard questions. And some people don't ask me very politely. Really, only one person didn't ask me politely. It didn't go well for her. But if you ask me the hard questions politely, you will get a very polite response. And if it's an answer we don't like, I'll let you know. And I'll also let you know what questions you should be asking.
Awesome.
Yep. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you very
This was
much.
excellent. Thank you very much.
guys.
Andrew Cottone. And the
Shandong.
first. Thank you. Fantastic.
Got to hit that one right there.
Good.